I'm the Veterans Agent here for the City of Marlborough, and I'd like to welcome you all to our Medal of Liberty presentation. You all got the letters from me. They're actually from Matt with my name on them. And then I got about 1,000 phone calls from all of you, and I think it's great. When I was looking through the applications that you sent, I truly understand why we call these the greatest generation. Some of the individuals that I was reading the stories, some of you all had the newspaper articles, the death notifications, and it's unreal. It's stuff you really don't see. You don't have a full appreciation for until you have it in your hands and you're looking at it. So this is a wonderful way to honor these men. Now, if you could, I'd like you to please stand, take off your hats. I'd like to introduce Julie Kajalski to sing our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Julie. That was awesome. I would now like to introduce, to say our opening prayer, Chaplain Bob Gregoire.
Good evening. We, the veterans of the City of Marlborough and the community of Marlborough, have gathered here this evening to pay respects to the veterans of World War II and to give comfort to their family and friends. We ask you to join with us in the spirit of fellowship and prayer. Together, let us pray the 23rd Psalm. Uncover. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. In verdant pastures he gave me repose. Beside restful waters he leads me. He refreshes my soul. He guides me in light, bright paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk in the valley, I fear no evil, for you are my side, with your rod and staff that give me courage. You spread the table before me in the sight of foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Only goodness and kindness follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for years to come. Amen.
Thank you, Bob. I'd now like to introduce the Mayor of Marlborough, the Honorable Arthur Vigent.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to really welcome everyone on behalf of myself and the city councilors that are here today. Welcome you to this great event. When we started doing the invitations, Mike kept coming in and saying more and more people were coming, and it's just a fantastic day for the city for you all to come here and recognize these brave men that served in World War II. We are here to honor and recognize our servicemen and women who gave the ultimate sacrifices during World War II. This is the largest Medal of Liberty celebration we've held in Marlborough. And I'd like to thank all the families who made an effort to be here. I was told that someone out there actually came up from Tennessee. Is there someone from Tennessee here today? Thank you very much. Secretary Cheryl Poppy is here. Brigadier General Francis McGurn is here. Senator Eldridge came out today. Thank you very much. Representative Gentile and several of the city councilors are also here. I would also like to thank Marlborough Veterans Agent Mike Hennessy and the Marlborough Historical Society for organizing this special event today. And finally, a special thanks to Lieutenant Commander U.S. Navy Matt Sargent for his dedication to helping our vets. And while we're at it, can we all have a little congratulation applause for the recent graduate of the U.S. Naval War College, Matt Sargent. We have a lot of brave men that we have to recognize, so with that, they told me to stay short. I'd like to introduce Representative Gentile. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Vigent, and I want to also welcome everyone here this afternoon. Thank you for coming. My father fought in the Second World War in North Africa, and Italy, and France, and Germany, and we were fortunate he was able to return. I wouldn't be here today if he hadn't returned. But we're here today to honor you, honor your fathers, grandfathers who fought in the war and perished, and we owe our freedom. We owe our freedom to them. In the Second World War, we had a horrible dictators who decided to just thought they could take over the world. Just as today we have another terrible dictator trying to take over the Ukraine, and our fathers and grandfathers and uncles and great uncles and some grandmothers fought, and many died, and your relatives passed in that war, gave their lives so that we could be free in this country. And we honor their memories, and we thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. And I'd like to introduce General McGurn.
Good evening, everyone. It is both a personal and professional honor for me to be here with you this evening as we acknowledge the loss and sacrifice that so many families have paid or have suffered through. The actual Medal of Liberty was signed into law by Governor Baker after the legislature passed it with flying colors. In order to not so much acknowledge the passing of a service member, but to specifically acknowledge the pain and suffering and the hole that a loved one leaves when they pass away in service of our country. I know that many of you are here to kind of fill out a family legacy, a piece of family history from many years ago, and some of you may be suffering a very recent loss. Nonetheless, it touches every family. It leaves a hole in every family. And I find it to be amongst the most emotional and honorable things that we in uniform do outside of perhaps presenting the colors to a family at a gravesite. So with that, you can tell a lot about a community, the way they turn out for certain things, and this speaks an awful lot about the community of Marlborough. We've never had, or I've never attended, such a well-organized or large venue Medal of Liberty presentation event. So I think you all should give yourselves a big round of applause because quality shows. I'm sorry, I got so wrapped up I almost forgot to present my fellow guard member and secretary, Cheryl Park.
Thank you, General McGurn. Now I know why there's an echo. There are two microphones. Good afternoon. It is such an honor to be joining all of you today, all our elected officials, all our members of the military, all of our leaders in the community, but most importantly, the families of our fallen service members from the greatest generation. Today was Flag Day and also the Army birthday, and we came together to recognize, and we are now together to recognize these brave patriots who have died in the name of service to our great nation and Commonwealth. And while I did not know your loved ones personally, I think I can bet that they were people for whom service was a noble calling. It was a cause greater than themselves. These are individuals, patriots, who gave to their community and Commonwealth. They worked hard, they had their own dreams and aspirations for themselves and their families, and you are all the result of those dreams here. Their spirit lives on in you, their family members who they have left behind. And as General McGurn said, the Massachusetts Medal of Liberty ensures that that service and their sacrifice will never be forgotten. And while the loss of any service member is one too many, I take solace in the fact that Massachusetts has been and continues to be home to countless patriots from the Revolutionary War to today. This afternoon, I had the honor to be joining, celebrating also the Army birthday up at Dorchester Heights. And Governor Baker came to acknowledge that, this event, the 247th birthday. And he remarked on how we are the only country that does have leaders who serve and give their lives in other countries to keep us free. And you can see crosses all over the Commonwealth, the United States, and then even in other countries that signify and demonstrate that service and that sacrifice. And that's only in this country that we have seen that kind of sacrifice for freedom. And then from the great heroine and Massachusetts native Deborah Sampson, who disguised herself and fought during the American Revolution to battle the British. And then more recently, we lost Captain Ross Reynolds from the Marine Corps, who was killed in action in an Osprey crash in Norway earlier this year. We also lost Sergeant Yohani Rosario Pichardo, killed in action in Afghanistan at the end of the drawdown in August of 2021. And your loved ones are now joining with them in their spirit. And to your loved ones, those soldiers who were in the invasion of Normandy, who endured the cold of the Bastogne, I saw the photos and all of the different campaigns that they were involved with. From the Marines at Peleliu and Iwo Jima, from the Navy, who provided the destroyers, the Battle of Midway, who provided the transport to bring our soldiers and all the other service members overseas. And then also, we just a few weeks ago recognized merchant marines who suffered very high casualties during World War II and provided a lot of the transport and bringing the materials over for those overseas. So all of those fought in those battles. And the American patriots span different generations and from all walks of life. But what unites us is a continuous selfless service, sacrifice, and dedication to our nation and Commonwealth, fighting for one nation, one flag. We salute them, their bravery, their courage, and their valor. We remember them always. And I do want you to know that the Department of Veteran Services, whether Massachusetts or Tennessee or any other state that you are from, we are here to support you and your families, always. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. The Second World War from 1939 to 1945 shaped the world and affected the lives of millions from every nation on the planet. Over 800 men and women from Marlborough answered their nation's call to service in the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Army Air Forces, Coast Guard, Merchant Marine, and in civil defense work. At this time, we have identified 115 men with a connection to the city of Marlborough by birth, life, or death that made the ultimate sacrifice during the course of the war. The youngest was 17, the oldest was 62. Today we recognize the sacrifice of 38 of these men and recognize their families. Please hold all applause until the end. When called to be recognized, we ask a representative from each family to come to the stage, or if not able, please come to the front of the stage and we will come to you. Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 33, Section 67A. There shall be a Medal of Liberty which shall be awarded to the next of kin of servicemen and women from the Commonwealth, killed in action, or who died in service while in a designated combat area in the line of duty, or who died as a result of wounds received in action. Attention to orders. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Second Lieutenant George Boudreau. George was born and raised in Marlborough and lived with his parents on Broad Street. He was an aviation enthusiast and enlisted into the Army Air Corps in November of 1942. Following his initial training, he earned his pilot's wings and a commission as a second lieutenant in 1943. He was ultimately assigned as a B-17 pilot with the 339th Bombardment Squadron 96 Bombardment Group. He arrived in England in June of 1944 and flew missions into Germany, for which he was awarded an Air Medal. On the 21st of July, 1944, while over Regensburg, Germany, George's B-17 was shot down by anti-aircraft fire, and all hands bailed out of the aircraft. George was able to deploy his parachute, only to be killed while crashing through the trees so close to the ground. He was 23 years old. He's buried at the Saint of Old American Cemetery and Memorial in Lorraine, France. Accepting the medal on behalf of Second Lieutenant George Boudreau is his sister Jean Brule of Marlborough, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Fireman First Class Valmore Beauregard. Valmore was born and raised in Marlborough and made his home with his parents on Mechanic Street. He enlisted in the Navy in February of 1944, and following his initial training, was assigned to Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 16. He was assigned to PT-300 and participated in the Battle of Mindoro in the Philippines. On the 18th of December 1944, PT-300 was struck by a Japanese kamikaze and sunk, killing Valmore and 3 other members of his crew. He was 18 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Fireman First Class Valmore Beauregard is his niece, Cheryl Bourgault of Leominster, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Second Lieutenant Alfred Bond, Jr. Alfred was born and raised in Worcester, Massachusetts. He enlisted in the Army Air Corps and after earning his pilot's wings, was assigned to the 524th Fighter Squadron with the 27th Fighter Group. Flying P-47 Thunderbolt aircraft, Alfred flew over 35 missions in Italy, France, and Germany, for which he was awarded 3 separate air medals. On the 27th of April, 1945, after strafing German positions near Frankfurt, Alfred was shot down by anti-aircraft fire, and he was killed in the ensuing crash. He was 21 years old. Alfred is buried in Maplewood Cemetery in Marlborough. Accepting the medal on behalf of Second Lieutenant Alfred Bond, Jr. is his nephew, Thomas Jordan, from Berlin, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private First Class Joseph Buffard. Joseph was born and raised in Marlborough and made his home with his parents on Washington Street in Hudson. Joseph enlisted in the Army in February of 1944. Following his initial training, he was assigned to the 262nd Infantry Regiment with the 66th Infantry Division. Joseph and his fellow soldiers sailed to Europe aboard the SS Leopoldville and arrived in theater in early December of 1944. While en route to Cherbourg Harbor on the 25th of December 1944, the Leopoldville was torpedoed by a German U-boat. Joseph was among the 819 men who died on Christmas Day during the attack. He was 31 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private First Class Joseph Buffard is his great niece, Roseanne Hunter of Shirley, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private Daniel Cashman. Daniel was a resident of Marlborough and lived with his aunt on Pleasant Street. He enlisted into the Marine Corps while studying at Bentley College in 1942. Following his training, he was assigned to Howe Company, 2nd Battalion, 7th Regiment, 1st Marine Division. Daniel and the others of the 7th Marines landed on Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands in September of 1942. On the night of 28 October 1942, Daniel was killed by a hand grenade during an attack on his company's position. He was 22 years old. He's buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private Daniel Cashman is his cousin, Margaret Thompson of Middleborough, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Machinist Mate Second Class Charles Conley. Charles was born in Marlborough and was a resident of Nashua, New Hampshire when he enlisted into the Navy in 1942. Charles completed training and was assigned to the USS Henry Mallory. While en route to Europe in part of a convoy of ships, the Mallory was struck by a torpedo 600 miles southwest of Iceland on the 7th of February, 1943. Charles was among the 272 men who were killed during this attack. He was 40 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Machinist Mate Second Class Charles Connolly is his daughter Doris Webb, represented by Bill Tate of the Marlborough Historical Society. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Aviation Machinist Mate Third Class Ernest D'Amico. Ernest was raised in Marlborough and lived with his mother and stepfather on Howland Street. He enlisted into the Navy in 1942 and following his initial training was assigned to work on naval aircraft aboard carriers. He soared aboard the carriers Charger and Ranger before being assigned to the USS Franklin as part of the commissioning crew. The Franklin departed for the Pacific in the early summer of 1944 and participated in fighting near the Marianas Islands, Peleliu, and Leyte in the Philippines. Franklin was damaged by a kamikaze in late October 1944 and was required to return stateside for repairs. Back in the Pacific in early 1945, the Franklin was hit by a Japanese bomber while operating 50 miles from mainland Japan on the 19th of March 1945. Ernest was among the 807 men killed during the attack. He was 20 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Aviation Machinist Mate Third Class Ernest D'Amico is his niece, Catherine Kuiper of Marlborough, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Staff Sergeant Peter Desimone. Peter was born and raised in Marlborough and made his home with his parents on Lincoln Street. He enlisted into the Army Air Corps in September of 1942. Following his initial training, he was assigned to the 577th Bombardment Squadron, the 392nd Bombardment Group. Peter was assigned as a nose and waist gunner to a B-24 aircraft named Miss America. On the 13th of November 1943, on their fifth mission to bomb Germany, the B-24 was struck by bombs from another aircraft in its formation and attacked by fighters as it attempted to limp home. The aircraft crashed into the North Sea with a loss of all hands. Peter was 22 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Staff Sergeant Peter Desimone is his nephew, Peter Desimone, represented by Karen Widener, Marlborough Historical Society trustee. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Second Lieutenant Albert Dussault. Albert was born in Hudson and was raised in Haverhill. He enlisted in the Army Air Corps while living in New Hampshire, and after earning his pilot's wings, was assigned to the 21st Fighter Squadron of the 413th Fighter Group. On the 19th of May, 1945, while attempting to land his P-47 Thunderbolt on an airfield at Ieshima in the Ryukyu Islands, the aircraft crashed, killing Albert. He was 24 years old and is buried at the St. Mary's Cemetery in Marlborough. Accepting the medal on behalf of Second Lieutenant Albert Dussault is his nephew, Ralph Jolie, represented by Lisa Stone, Marlborough Historical Society trustee. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Motor Machinist Mate First Class Edmund Ethier. Edmund was born in Marlborough and served his first enlistment in the Navy from 1929 to 1932, serving aboard battleships and an ammunition ship. After returning home, Edmund made his home on Mechanic Street in Marlborough and worked as an auto mechanic in a garage. He enlisted in the Navy in 1942 and was assigned to the USS Ancon and participated in the landings in North Africa. Edmund was transferred to the landing ship tank USS LST-342 in February of 1943. On the 18th of July, 1943, while operating near the Solomon Islands in the South Pacific, LST-342 was hit by a torpedo from a Japanese submarine and sunk, killing 90 men, including Edmund. He was 30 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Motor Machinist Mate First Class Edmund Ethier is his daughter, Patricia Nicoloulis, from Natick, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Captain George Peter Evans. George was born in Marlborough and raised in Marlborough. He became interested in aviation and worked at the Parks Air College in East St. Louis, Illinois. He was commissioned an officer in the Royal Air Force Ferry Command while living in Montreal, Canada. He was a very successful pilot and credited with being among the first to fly the Arctic route to bring supplies and aircraft to Europe. He was awarded the Officer of the Most Distinguished Order of the British Empire by the King of England in 1943. On the 4th of July, 1945, while piloting a transport aircraft with a delegation of British State Department officials from Montreal back to the United Kingdom, the aircraft crashed into the North Atlantic with the loss of all hands. George was 34 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Captain George Peter Evans is his grandson, Maurice Kobe, represented by Sandra Huey, volunteer researcher. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private First Class Joseph Ferrecchio. Joseph was raised in Marlborough and was living in Clinton when he enlisted in the Army in March of 1944. Following his initial training, he was assigned to the 8th Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Division. He met his new unit in September of 1944 in time to fight in the Hurtgen Forest. A prolific writer, Joseph's letters were reprinted in the Marlborough Enterprise and Clinton Item. On the 9th of February 1945, Joseph was killed in action along the German border. He was 28 years old. He's buried in the Immaculate Conception Cemetery in Marlborough. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private First Class Joseph Ferrecchio is his daughter, Barbara Wells, represented by Buck Coliani, Marlborough Historical Society trustee. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Corporal Joseph Roger Fontaine. Joseph attended the Wayside Inn School for Boys and was living in Marlborough when he enlisted into the Marine Corps in December of 1941. Following his initial training, Joseph was assigned to Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Regiment, 1st Marine Division. Surviving the fighting at Guadalcanal from August of 1942 to February of 1943, Joseph and the 1st Marine Division were sent to Australia for rest and training. On the 16th of August 1943, while performing maneuvers near Melbourne, Australia, a short mortar round landed on Joseph's machine gun position, killing him. He was 22 years old. He's buried at the National Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. Accepting the medal on behalf of Corporal Joseph Roger Fontaine is his nephew, Paul Roger Senes of Westfield, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Sergeant Wallace Goucher, Jr. Wallace was born and raised in Hudson before moving to Marlborough with his parents, where they lived on Maplewood Avenue. He enlisted into the Army in May of 1943 while working at the LaPont Machine Tool Company. Following his initial training, he was assigned to the 18th Infantry Regiment of the 1st Infantry Division. On the 5th of May 1945, Wallace was killed in Czechoslovakia. He was 22 years old. Wallace is buried at the Lorraine American Cemetery and Memorial in Saint-Avold, France. Accepting the medal on behalf of Sergeant Wallace Goucher, Jr. is his great-grandnephew, William Campbell of Marlborough, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private First Class Alfred Gregoire. Alfred resided on Bolton Street in Marlborough and enlisted into the Army shortly after his marriage in 1942. He was assigned to the 180th Infantry Regiment of the 45th Infantry Division. He participated on the amphibious assault onto Sicily in 1943, where he was wounded in the leg. Alfred and his regiment next participated in the amphibious assault on the mainland Italy near Salerno, spending the next 119 days in combat. Alfred and the 180th next landed at Anzio, Italy, where Alfred was killed during an artillery attack the 22nd of February 1944. He was 28 years old. Alfred is buried at the Sicily-Rome American War Cemetery in Nettuno, Italy. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private First Class Alfred Gregoire is his nephew, James Gregoire of Marlborough, Massachusetts. The next two awards are the first set of two sets of brothers that were killed from Marlborough. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private Woodrow Hood. Woodrow was born and raised in Marlborough and a graduate of Marlborough High School. He enlisted in the Marine Corps in May of 1939. Following his initial training, he was assigned to the 1st Marine Defense Battalion, which was defending Wake Island. Woodrow was among the small garrison of troops that was attacked shortly after the surprise bombing of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. On the 23rd of December, 1941, while attempting to repel a Japanese attack, Woodrow was killed in action by a Japanese sniper. He was 23 years old and the first man from Marlborough to die in the Second World War. He's buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private Woodrow Hood is his niece, Joanne Papagno Sparks of Palm Coast, Florida. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private First Class Albert Hood. Albert resided in Marlborough on Berkeley Street when he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps to avenge the death of his brother Woodrow. Albert served in the 1st Battalion, 23rd Regiment, 4th Marine Division. On the 16th of June, 1944, the second day of the battle for Saipan and the Marianas Islands, Albert was killed while manning a machine gun. He was 21 years old. He's buried at St. Mary's Cemetery in Marlborough. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private First Class Albert Hood is his niece, Alberta Fitzpatrick of Newton, Massachusetts.
Show this to everybody here. This was my uncle, my godfather, Albert, who died in the Second World War. I never knew him because he died 5 days before I was born. I always grew up wondering about him, and I always had his picture in my bedroom. And I talked to him a lot. And this is a wonderful, fitting way for us all to understand what this was all about. This says, Albert sent this to my mother. It says, to the best sis a guy could ever have.
On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Technical Sergeant Leon Lamar. Leon was born in New Hampshire and raised in Vermont. He was a member of the 172nd Infantry Regiment of the Vermont National Guard, and following his first enlistment, lived with his sister Laura Bergeron on Maple Street. He was mobilized for federal service in September of 1942 and was assigned to the 47th Armored Infantry Battalion of the 5th Armored Division. Leon and his fellow soldiers landed on Utah Beach shortly after the initial landings on D-Day, and he was with this unit through the liberation of Paris, France, and Luxembourg City, Luxembourg. During this time, Leon was awarded a Bronze Star. On the 21st of September 1944, Leon was killed in action during attacks against the German Siegfried Line. He was 37 years old. Leon is buried in the Cavalry Cemetery in Greenfield, Massachusetts. Accepting the medal on behalf of Technical Sergeant Leon Lamar is his niece, Barbara Nelson of Marlborough, Massachusetts. behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private Eugene Lambert. Eugene was born and raised in Marlborough and made his home with his parents on Monument Avenue. He was a member of the Company K of the 181st Infantry Regiment, Massachusetts National Guard, and following his mobilization, he trained as a paratrooper at Fort Benning, Georgia. Eugene earned his paratrooper wings and was assigned to Company A of the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. On the 6th of June, 1944, while participating in the invasion of mainland Europe, Eugene was killed in action. He was 25 years old. He's buried at the Normandy American Cemetery and Memorial in Colleville-sur-Mer, France. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private Eugene Lambert is his niece, Mary Belmore of North Grafton, Massachusetts. Next is the second set of brothers that we'll recognize tonight. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Technical Sergeant John Langelier. John was born and raised in Marlborough and lived with his parents on Warren Avenue. He married and moved to Milton and was a member of the 181st Infantry Regiment of the National Guard. He was mobilized for federal service in January of 1941 and was assigned to Coastal Defense with the 26th Infantry Division. He was transferred to the 357th Infantry Regiment of the 90th Infantry Division. John and the 357th Infantry Regiment landed on Utah Beach on the 8th of June, 1944, and began fighting in the hedgerows of Normandy. John earned his first Purple Heart on the 7th of August, 1944, near the French city of Le Mans, and he earned his second Purple Heart with shrapnel to his legs while assaulting the French city of Reims. On the 15th of November, 1944, John was killed in action while attacking German positions on the Maginot Line. He was 27 years old. John is buried at the Milton Cemetery in Milton, Massachusetts. Accepting the medal on behalf of Technical Sergeant John Langelier is his grandnephew, John Daniel Simino. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Second Lieutenant Daniel Langelier. Daniel was born and raised in Marlborough and lived with his parents on Warren Avenue. He enlisted into the Army Air Corps in 1942. Following his training, he earned his pilot's wings in May of 1944 and was assigned as a P-51 Mustang pilot in the 343rd Fighter Squadron of the 55th Fighter Group. He reported to his new squadron in Europe in early 1945. He flew a number of missions and was awarded an Air Medal. On the 17th of April 1945, while performing low-level strafing runs on German positions near Dresden, Germany, Daniel was shot down and killed. He was 22 years old. His remains have not been found. Accepting the medal on behalf of Second Lieutenant Daniel Langelier is his nephew, Daniel Langelier of Marlborough, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Master Sergeant Lloyd Lincoln. Lloyd was born in Montana and raised in Medway, Massachusetts. He enlisted in the Army in July of 1940 and following his initial training was assigned to the Military Intelligence Branch. Lloyd was a specialist in radio signals intelligence and was ultimately assigned to the 112th Radio Signals Intelligence Company. This unit listened for Japanese radio signals to provide intelligence reports to higher headquarters. Lloyd saw service on Guadalcanal and participated in the amphibious assaults into the Philippines at Luzon. On the 14th of March, 1944, Lloyd was killed during a Japanese artillery attack on his company's position. He was 26 years old. Lloyd is buried at Maplewood Cemetery in Marlborough. Accepting the medal on behalf of Master Sergeant Lloyd Lincoln is his niece, Diane Kuna of Portland, Maine. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Chief Aviation Machinist Mate Bernard Lyle Jr. Bernard was raised in Hudson and worked as a mechanic at the Marlborough Airport before enlisting in the Navy in 1942. He was an instructor at the Naval Air Technical Training Center in Chicago before being transferred to Patrol Bombing Squadron 209. While part of a crew of a PBM Mariner aircraft conducting anti-submarine operations in the Caribbean Sea, the aircraft crashed into the ocean the 16th of July, 1944 with a loss of all hands. Bernard was 32 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Chief Aviation Machinist Mate Bernard Lyle Jr. is his niece, Virginia Funk, represented by Doug Rowe, Marlborough Historical Society President. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private Hector McKay. Hector was born in Canada and immigrated to the United States, settling in Marlborough. He made his home with his wife and children on Broad Street. He enlisted in the Army in December of 1943, and while at boot camp was brought to Canada and then crossed the border back into the United States, from which he was made a naturalized citizen. Following his training, he was assigned to the 422nd Infantry Regiment of the 106th Infantry Division. This unit was shipped with very little training and sent directly to the front lines at St. Vith, Belgium. This area was the center point of the German attack, known as the Battle of the Bulge. Hector, along with most of his fellow soldiers, was captured following the attack on the 16th of December, 1944. Hector would die in a German prisoner of war camp, Stalag Luft 4B, the 26th of January, 1945, from pneumonia. He was 35 years old. He's buried in the Ardennes American Cemetery and Memorial in Nieuville and Condroz, Belgium. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private Hector McKay is his daughter, Barbara Dexter, represented by Linda Rennie, Marlborough Historical Society Secretary. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Technician 4th Grade Gaetano Martinangelo. Gaetano was born in Marlborough and was raised on South Street. He enlisted in the Army in February of 1942, and following his basic training was assigned to the 711th Tank Battalion. Gaetano and the 711th shipped out to the Pacific Theater and were attached to the 7th Infantry Division, participating in fighting on the island of Leyte in the Philippines. In April of 1945, Gaetano and the 711th landed on the island of Okinawa. Equipped with flamethrower tanks, Gaetano and his fellow tankers encountered fierce resistance. On the 20th of April 1945, Gaetano was inside a tank that was struck by Japanese artillery, igniting the fuel tanks and killing the crew. His body was not recovered and is still officially listed as missing in action. He was 29 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Technician 4th Grade Gaetano Martinangelo is his niece, Barbara Garapi of Sudbury, Massachusetts, represented by Dick Hamill, Marlborough Historical Society Trustee. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Electrician's Mate, 3rd Class, Nicholas Masciarelli. Nicholas was born and raised in Marlborough and a graduate of the Marlborough High School. He made his home with his parents on South Street. Nicholas enlisted into the Navy in December of 1940, and following his initial training was assigned to the heavy cruiser USS Vincennes. Nicholas was aboard the Vincennes while she was assigned to protect the USS Hornet during the Doolittle raid and protected the USS Yorktown during the Battle of Midway, both in early 1942. The Vincennes was flagship for Task Force 62, which supported the amphibious landings on Guadalcanal in August of 1942. On the 9th of August, the Vincennes, along with other vessels, was attacked by a superior Japanese force and was sunk, taking Nicholas and 332 of his shipmates with him. He was 25 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Electrician's Mate, 3rd Class, Nicholas Masciarelli, is his niece, Annette Messina of Waltham, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private First Class Christy Matheson. Christy was a resident of Marlborough and lived on Franklin Street. He was a longtime member of the National Guard, serving in the 181st Infantry Regiment, Company K. He was mobilized for federal service in January 1941, and after serving on coastal defense duty, was assigned as a replacement to the 142nd Infantry Regiment of the 36th Infantry Regiment. He joined the 142nd in Italy shortly after the unit was decimated following attacks across the Gari River. Christie participated in the breakout from the Anzio beachhead and was with the 36th Division when it landed in southern France as part of Operation Dragoon in August of 1944. Christie and his fellow soldiers pushed through the Mosel River and the Vosges Mountains. On the 17th of October 1944, near the French village of Jussarupt, Christie was killed in action. He was 32 years old. His grave is located in the Epinal American Cemetery and Memorial in Epinal, France. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private First Class Christy Matheson is his nephew, Charles Cole of Marlborough, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to First Lieutenant Carlo Miele. Carlo was born and raised in Marlborough, living on Essex Street. He enlisted into the National Guard and was mobilized for federal service in January of 1941. Carlo completed Officer Candidate School and was commissioned a second lieutenant and assigned to Company C, 8th Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Division. Carlo and his men landed at Utah Beach during the Battle for Normandy and fought in France, Belgium, and took part in the Battle of the Bulge in Luxembourg in 1944. On the 2nd of March 1945, while attacking positions near Willeroth, Germany, Carlo was killed by a German sniper while directing his troops and providing covering fire. For his actions, he was awarded a Silver Star. He was 24 years old. Carlo is buried at the Immaculate Conception Cemetery in Marlborough. Accepting the medal on behalf of First Lieutenant Carlo Miele is his daughter, Tina Hawes of Natick, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private Thomas J. Munn. Thomas was born in Melrose, Massachusetts, and raised in Stoneham. He was a 1940 graduate of the Hillside School in Marlborough. He enlisted in the Marine Corps in April of 1943 and following his initial training was assigned to the 2nd Amphibian Tractor Battalion, 2nd Marine Division. On the 20th of November 1943, Thomas was killed in action while participating in the landings on the island of Tarawa in the Gilbert Islands. He was 19 years old. Thomas is buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private Thomas Munn is his niece, Lisa Haynes of Wakefield, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Motor Machinist Mate 2nd Class Romeo Natoli. Romeo was born in Marlborough, but was raised and lived in Waltham. He enlisted in the Navy in March of 1944, and following his initial training was assigned to the USS Winooski, a fleet oiler. He served in this vessel in both the European and Pacific Theater. Following the death of his wife Edna on the 25th of April 1945, Romeo was detached from his vessel and ordered home to take care of his young children. On the 5th of May 1945, while flying as a passenger aboard a C-54 Skymaster aircraft, the plane crashed on takeoff from Biak, New Guinea, killing all aboard. Romeo was 34 years old. Accepting the medal on behalf of Motor Machinist Mate 2nd Class are both of his sons. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Corporal Christos Papas. Christos was born and raised in Marlborough and made his home with his parents on John Street. He enlisted in the Army Air Corps in March of 1943, and following his initial training was assigned to the 571st Bombardment Squadron of the 390th Bombardment Group. Christos served as a top turret gunner and flight engineer aboard B-17 Liberator aircraft and completed over 36 missions. On the 10th of September 1945, Christos was aboard a B-25 Mitchell aircraft that crashed near Kalkis, Greece, killing all hands. Christos was 22 years old. He's buried at the Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery in LeMay, Missouri. Accepting the medal on behalf of Corporal Christos Papas is his nephew, George Anastos of Hull, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private Donald Perry. Donald was a resident of Marlborough and lived with his parents on Berlin Road. He enlisted in the Army in March of 1943. Following his initial training, he was assigned to the 3rd Infantry Regiment, where he served in a mounted reconnaissance company during the invasion of mainland Italy at Salerno. Donald and his fellow soldiers also participated in the landings at Anzio, Italy. In March of 1944, Donald was transferred to Company E of the 15th Infantry Regiment. The 15th Regiment and Donald landed near Caen, France in August of 1944 during the amphibious assault into southern France known as Operation Dragoon. On the 18th of August, 1944, while clearing a highway, Donald and others took refuge in a barn and were captured by German soldiers. Forced to dig defensive sites for the Germans, Donald was killed in action following an American artillery strike on their position. He was 20 years old. Donald is buried at the Rhone American Cemetery in Draguignan, France. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private Donald Perry is his nephew, Alan Giancola of Kennebunk, Maine. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private First Class Jack Perlman. Jack was born and raised in Manchester, New Hampshire, and a resident of Marlborough, living with his brother on Bolton Street when he enlisted into the Army in March of 1942. He served in the Engineering Corps of the 7th Army and participated in the invasion of Sicily. He died the 23rd of October 1943 in Tunisia, North Africa, from a brain tumor. He was 25 years old. He's buried at the Manchester Hebrew Cemetery in Manchester, New Hampshire. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private First Class Jack Perlman is his niece, Esther Kornblum of Framingham, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private First Class Raphael Pietro Luongo. Raphael was born in Italy and immigrated to the United States at a young age. He made his home with his parents on Broad Street and enlisted into the Army Air Corps in January of 1942. Following his initial training, he was assigned to the 69th Bombardment Squadron of the 42nd Bombardment Group. Raphael served as a tail gunner on B-26 aircraft operating as some of the first bombers to fight against the Japanese. On the 7th of January 1943, Raphael and the B-26 Krajan was shot down over Rakata Bay in the British Solomon Islands. He was 22 years old. Raphael is buried at the Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery in LeMay, Missouri. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private First Class Raphael Pietro Luongo is his sister, Elizabeth Evangelist of Marlborough, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Sergeant John Pomfrey. John was born and raised in Marlborough and a graduate of Marlborough High School. He made his home with his parents on State Street. John enlisted in the Army Air Corps in November of 1942, and following his initial training was assigned to the 490th Bombardment Squadron, 341st Bombardment Group, and sent to the China, India, Burma Theater. John served as a radio gunner aboard B-25 Mitchell bombers, which attacked bridges and Japanese forces in Burma in his new unit known as the Burma Bridge Busters. John participated in over 68 missions against the Japanese, for which he was awarded a Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal. On the 11th of August 1944, while attacking forces near Kata, Burma, the aircraft John was assigned to was damaged by anti-aircraft fire, and the crew ordered to bail out. John parachuted to safety but was never heard from again. He was 22 years old and still officially listed as missing in action. Accepting the medal on behalf of Sergeant John Pomfrey is his sister, Marjorie Pomfrey Pond from Berlin, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private First Class Norman Schofield. Norman enlisted into the Marine Corps in 1943 while working at the Norton Company in Worcester. Following his initial training, he was assigned to the 4th War Dog Platoon of the 3rd Amphibious Corps. The 4th War Dog Platoon was assigned to the 1st Marine Division and participated in the amphibious assault on the island of Peleliu in the Palau Islands. The attack began on the 15th of September 1944. On the 18th of September, when a call went out for stretcher bearers to help assist other wounded Marines, Norman volunteered. While en route to the front lines, a Japanese mortar landed close to the volunteers, and the concussion killed Norman. He was 24 years old. He's buried at the St. Mary's Cemetery in Marlborough. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private First Class Norman Schofield is his nephew, Michael Rieger of Westminster, Massachusetts. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Staff Sergeant Donald Sheridan. Donald was born and raised in Marlborough and lived with his parents on Devon Street. He enlisted in the Army in February of 1942, and following his initial training was assigned to the 157th Infantry Regiment, 45th Infantry Division. Donald and the 157th landed in Sicily during Operation Husky in July of 1943, and also participated in the landings at Salerno in southern Italy. The regiment next participated in the amphibious landings at Anzio, Italy in January of 1944, which led to a stalemate. In May of 1944, Donald and the 157th Regiment formed the left wing of the Allied breakout from the Anzio beachhead. On the 27th of May 1944, Donald, along with 19 other men, were killed during fighting along the Cisterna-Campoleone road. During his time in the service, Donald was awarded 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star. He was 27 years old at the time of his death. Donald is buried at the Immaculate Conception Cemetery in Marlborough. Accepting the medal on behalf of Staff Sergeant Donald Sheridan is his niece, Carol Goldman, represented by Bill Dunbar, trustee of the Marlborough Historical Society. On behalf of Governor Charles Baker, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Medal of Liberty is presented to Private William Wakefield. William was born and raised in Marlborough and began service in the National Guard in 1927. He made his home with his wife and children on Francis Street. He enlisted in the regular Army in February of 1944. Following his initial training, he was assigned to the 329th Infantry Regiment of the 83rd Infantry Division. William and the 329th landed at Omaha Beach on the 18th of June 1944 and fought through the hedgerows of France before heading into Luxembourg. On the 4th of October 1944, while on a nighttime patrol of German positions near Echternach, Luxembourg, William was wounded in action and not able to be recovered by his squad. His remains were found when Americans secured the area a few days later. He was 35 years old. William is buried at the Henry Chapelle American Cemetery in Henry Chapelle, Belgium. Accepting the medal on behalf of Private William Wakefield is his daughter, Joan Veldhuizen, represented by his niece, Linda Valianti of Marlborough, Massachusetts. This concludes the awards portion of our program this evening. I'd like to do a round of applause for all the recipients and their families. I would like to take some time to thank our distinguished guests and presenters, the folks at the Marlborough Historical Society, Sandra Huey for a lot of help with the research, and getting in touch with a lot of you in the room tonight. We're presenting medals to represent 38 men, and there's many more people here than just 38, so that's wonderful to see. In your programs, you'll see the names and the little stories about all of the men that we've been able to find so far. And many of their photos are posted out in the foyer. I hope you get a chance to look at those on your way out or on your way in. So thank you again from all of you. And I'll turn it over to Mike.
On behalf of the city, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. General McGurn, Secretary Poppy, Bob Gregoire, Representative Gentile, Representative Gregoire, Senator Eldridge, members of City Council and the Historical Society, and Mayor Vigil for allowing us to have the event here. I was told that there is cake out in the lobby from the Marlborough Historical Society, so please have some on your way out. And thank you everybody for coming.